Okay, today we're going to be making my fancy sourdough artisan loaf with whole grains. You'll see that I'm grinding up the wheat berries right now. Those are hard red wheat berries. Those are my favorite. It adds just such a nice flour texture and flavor to it that I like a lot better than the white ones actually. So we are just going to get our stand mixer up or a bowl, and we're going to mix in our 1 cup of starter, our 1 cup of water, 2 teaspoons of salt, and I do 1 cup of all-purpose white flour, that's organic, and then I do 2 cups of the freshly milled red berries that I like. And then I'm going to put my dough hook on there, and we're just going to mix it for about a minute or two just so it comes together. And then I'm going to let it rest for 15 minutes just to see the absorption of the red berries, because those that freshly ground wheat, will absorb a lot more liquid than your regular all-purpose that's been ground from the store for a long time. So this way, after 15 minutes, I can kind of tell, do I need to add a little bit more water or another tablespoon of flour? So then I'm going to come back and check it, and you see I added a little bit more water for that one. And then I'm going to turn it back on low and knead it for about 5 minutes. And I want the dough to be still a little bit sticky, as you can tell, but pulling away from most of the bowl itself. I don't need it a hard dough yet, because I'm going to let it sit for another hour, and then I'm going to come back. So this way those berries are going to be absorbing the rest of the liquid. So what I'm going to do is do a set of stretch and folds. And I'm going to come back, or I'm going to cover this up, and then come back in another hour and do about 4 different times, 4 to 6 times of stretch and folds. There's no hard and fast rule. It's kind of like, oh, did I remember when I walked back in the kitchen? Then I go ahead and I do a stretch and fold, and then I come back. But you'll see the texture of the dough change with each time you come back to it. It's really amazing, and it's just so cool to watch how God has provided us with these wheat berries to make awesome bread that we can have all the time. And I really like making this bread for soups and for toast, because you can slather on a lot of butter or whatever you're putting on there. The kids like to do jelly or peanut butter, and there's not all those holes that everything would slip through, so I really like it. Then after about the 4 or 6 times of the stretch and folds, I'll start maybe doing it on the counter, and you can make the holes, your holes in the dough, a little bit bigger by spreading your dough out even farther. So you see, my dough is getting a little more elastic with the every time I come back and do it. So I like to do that, and so you kind of get it wider on the counter and spread it out more. And now this part is the shaping part of the dough. I'm going to come back and do this a couple times as well. And I'm just kind of slapping it on the counter and pulling it slightly towards me on an angle. And that's just tightening up the dough and creating that tight outside of your dough. I guess they call it a skin or whatever. It's just kind of fun. And I might do this a couple different times. I may do stretch and folds like this just to get the crumb a little bit bigger, or you'll not do that as many times with the flattening of the dough if you want a really tight crumb. Just kind of depending on what you're looking for. And you really just kind of keep coming back and playing with the dough all the time, which is really fun because it's going to change, and it's every time you do it, you're kind of flattening it, but then it just keeps bouncing back up to this beautiful dough. Then I'm going to go ahead and put it in a banneton or a bowl lined with cheesecloth, sprinkled with a good amount of flour on there so it doesn't stick in there. I'm going to cover it with the plastic wrap, and we're going to place it overnight in the fridge. And then we're going to bring it out of the fridge that next morning. And you can see that it's called a Bach cold ferment. You can see that it filled up the bowl pretty nicely. I'm going to go ahead and preheat my oven to 500 degrees with the Dutch oven inside the oven with the lid on. Right now, while it's preheating, I just kind of used my parchment paper on top of the bowl and then flipped it over so I can remove the dough itself, remove the cheesecloth. I'm going ahead and then now use that parchment paper to sling in the dough into the Dutch oven there. And this is where we're going to go ahead and score it. And you can score it however you want. I just kind of do 2 big lines that are pretty deep. You can do a bunch of small ones or little ones or mix and match. Those are those, you know, when people start getting all really fancy, right? Anyways, I call this fancy because I like the song by Iggy Azalea about I'm so fancy. You're welcome for the side note. And then I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle water on top. I just like to sprinkle a little bit of water. It seems to open it up a little bit better when I sprinkle water. So I'm just going to sprinkle. If you have a spray bottle with water on it, that'd be like so much easier. But I'm literally just putting my hand in the running water and sprinkling it. Got to get it done, right? And then I'm going to go ahead and put the lid back on. I'm going to put it in the oven for 20 minutes at 500 with the lid on. I'm going to rotate it, remove the lid, put it down to 450 degrees, and bake it for an additional 20 minutes. And actually, at this part of the video, I'm cutting off the extra little parchment paper because it does seem to burn in there a little bit. Not that big of a deal, but I kind of had a little too much on there. Then after it bakes, we'll be able to remove it, and you're going to do a thump test that I'm going to show here. If you hear it sound hollow, that means it is baked all the way through, but you have to do it right when you remove it from the oven or while it's still in the oven and you just kind of tap it. If it's hollow, it's done. Then I'm going to go ahead and cut it in half, and I'm just kind of squeezing it for you and showing you how there's that tight crumb. Lots of holes, but it's a tight crumb. Again, super fancy terminology, right? I like to cut it in half and then cut it in half. I think Sally Fallon Morel told me to do that. So there's your delicious sourdough artisan loaf with a tight crumb made with whole grain.